Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you've got a bit lost. Welcome everyone, I'm Chatty, this is my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, and I'm going to be chatting away madly about my March stats. I enjoy talking about stats, I find it a lot of fun. So I'm going to be talking through what I planned to read in March, what I ended up actually reading, going through some sort of basic stats and finishing off with what it was my least favourite and most favourite book of the month. I'm also going to be talking about what I was trying to read for the Readathons for the month as well. So that was Middlegrade March and the Bronte Readathon. Both the descriptions for those will be, both videos and links for those will be in the description box if you want to find out more about them. And all of the books I mention will be also in the description box. I will put their Storygraph links so you can find out a little bit more. If you want to know my full thoughts on all of these books, then you can go and look at my March wrap-up, which I have here. So what books did I plan to read in March? If you like a TBR game, I do have my March game where I chose all the books, which I will link here, so you can go and check that out should you wish to. On this channel, I do one continuous shot for my long videos, so let the chaos commence. Here's my tiny teacup gimmick. It is one shot. There is no editing. Cheers, everyone. Clink, 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 clink. So the book that I had first for role number 1, I got a lucky ladder, which was to read more from an author that I enjoy. And the author I enjoy in question was Robin Hobb. So I put Royal Assassin, which is continuing my reread of The Realm of the Elderlings. This is book number 2 in that series. For role number 2, I got the 30-second prompt, where I had to read a book from an author that I have not read from before. So I put The Last Hope School for Magical Delinquents by Nikki Powell-Prato because I've not read one of her books before. I then had a Worrying Worm, and I was quite worried about this because I had to choose a book with from an author with a surname beginning with O. But luckily, magically, I have a book on my shelf by Tola Okaguro. It is the 3rd book in the Onyeka series. It is Onyeka and the Heroes of Dawn, and I really enjoy this series. Role number 4, I had a We're All Mad Here card, and I played Just a Pack of Cards game, and I won. So I got to choose the book I wanted to read as opposed to the book I didn't want to read. And the book that I wanted to read was the 2nd book in the duology, With Love from the Murasaki Bookshop. This is the bind-up of both Days at the Murasaki Bookshop and More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yasukawa. And so I read More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. I then got another Worrying Worm, which wasn't fun. This time it was the title of the book, and the title of the book had to begin with the letter E. This did get me in a bit of a pickle, but I eventually decided on Eric by Terry Pratchett, which is one of the books that I have no memory of whether or not I read from previously. And finally I got a pet pick, and my guinea pig Nacho chose for me a YA fantasy, which is The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix. And amongst that, I also chose some more books for Readathons that month. I wanted to take part in the Bronte Readathon, which is by Emily from Novel Novels. And the book that we the first prompt was to read a book by a Bronte, read a Bronte book. So I wanted to read Jane Eyre. It would be a reread. I've not read it for ages, but I really wanted to reread it. I've never read from this beautiful copy. It is the Penguin Classic, the cloth-bound edition, which some people love and some people hate. This is by Charlotte Bronte, and this was a buddy read with Emily, Danny, and Kat. Danny from Danny's Book World and Kat from Brews and Reviews. The other Bronte Readathon books I have was to read a dark book and to read a book with siblings. And I chose to read Royal Assassin as my dark book because that book has a lot of dark content in it. And I chose to read When Stars Are Scattered, which has a book of siblings. We have both Omar and Hassan. Yes, Hassan. Omar and Hassan are two brothers in this refugee camp, and this is a middle grade graphic novel memoir about their Omar's time in the refugee camp. It also happens to be the March and April book for the Read Around the Globe YA middle grade edition, which is the brainchild of Katya from Page Turns with Katya, and is being co-hosted with Jack from Spread Bookjoy. And it also just happens to be a book that I want to read for Middlegrade March because it is filling the prompt of travel. They have travelled from Somalia. I think, and I've just dropped all my books on the floor. Yeah, so they travelled from Somalia to the refugee camp in Kenya, and they would like to travel out of the refugee camp. But there is a lot of travelling done within the refugee camp for these brothers. The one of the group reads for the middle grade March was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So I wanted to read that one, and that was also my Read Something Written in 1900s pick. I already have 2 books on here. So the Last Hope School for Magical Delinquents by Nikki Powell-Prato is to read an author with 3 names, Nikki Powell-Prato, and Onyeka is the book that fits in part of a series. So there was also needed to be a book with flowers on the cover, and for that I have the last book in the Pages & Co series, which is The Last Book Wanderer, and we have some flowers on top of these 2 pillows here either side on the book cover. And this is a buddy read that I'm doing with Stacey, and also Kelly from Kelly Reads a Lot has been joining us with our journey through the Pages & Co series. So that's all my plans for readathons and things. I also had a few carryovers from February. So in February I had started Secrets of the Stars by Maria Kuznia because I just felt like the time to pick it up and read it was then, so I did. And I was continuing to read a book I got out of the library called Outrageous by Paul Baker, which is the story of Section 28 and Britain's battle for LGBT education. I also had 2 books that were officially on the TBR. One is The Empire of Gold, which is the final book in the Daevabad trilogy, an adult fantasy by S.A. Chakraborty, that I'd read maybe like the first 2 couple of chapters at the end of February, and because it just wasn't its time until the end of February, beginning of March. And also a poetry collection, Wearing My Mother's Heart by Sophia Thurker. So that's quite a lot of books on there. Shall we see which ones I actually read? And you can't even see them on the camera. Let's just twist it around there. So we're going to start off. Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I did not finish this book. I didn't even start this book in March. Did I start it? No, I did not start it. It wasn't its time in March. So this one moved over to a different month. I did read The Last Hope School for Magical Delinquents by Nikki Powell-Prato. I did not read Onyeka. I picked Onyeka up at the end of the month. And I think I just read quite a few middle grades close together. So I just wasn't quite in the mood for Onyeka. And I didn't want to read her when I wasn't in the mood because I'm just going to get some water. Much better. Yes, I didn't want to force myself to read a book that I really wasn't in the mood for, because I know I'm going to really enjoy this because I've enjoyed all the other books in the series. So it needed to be when I was in the right mood for it. So I didn't read Onyeka in March. I did read More Days at Murasaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yasukawa. I did read Eric by Terry Pratchett. I did read The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix. I did read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I did not read When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jameson and Omar Mohammed. Again, wasn't its time. So that moves off the pile. I did just about squeeze The Secret Garden in there I read most of it in March, but it did kind of flow on to April a little bit. Because I read most of it in March, it counts as a March book. I did read The Last Book Wanderer by Anna James. I did finish off The Secrets of the Stars by Maria Kuznia. I did read Outrageous by Paul Baker. I did read The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. I read some of Wearing My Mother's Heart by Sophia Thurker, but I didn't read all of it. Again, I could easily have done so, but I don't want to be making myself rush this poetry collection. I wanted to read a little bit, then kind of sit with it and read when it felt like the right time, rather than just reading to get it read. So this one also carries over. Okay, so I read 10 books, but I also picked up an audiobook that I hadn't planned for. So this is just going to be a little placeholder, so we have a nice visual, because I like a visual. And that is The Other Mother by Jen Brister, which is a memoir. So there we go. We have 11 books in March. I'm now going to go through the stats. And I'm going to start off with the age ranges. 4 books were middle grade. That's The Secret Garden, The Last Book Wanderer, The Secrets of the Stars, and The Last Hope School. So this is 4 out of 11. So that does hit my goal of wanting to have a third of what I read each month being middle grade books. So yay! I read 1 YA, which was The Ones We Burn. And I read 6 adult books. Jane Eyre, Outrageous, The Empire of Gold, The Other Mother, More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, and Eric. 8 of these books are my books from my personal library. Jane Eyre, The Empire of Gold, More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, The Ones We Burn, The Last Hope School, Secrets of the Stars, The Last Book Wanderer, and The Secret Garden. I got 2 books from the library. That was the audiobook The Other Mother and Outrageous. And 1 book I borrowed from my mum, which was Eric. And that also kind of covers the format. So I have 1 audiobook and then I have 10 novels. Even though some are small, they are not officially novellas, so they all count as novels. I had 2 rereads this month, both classics, Jane Eyre and The Secret Garden. And then I have 9 new reads to me: Eric, Outrageous, The Other Mother, The Empire of Gold, More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, The Ones We Burn, The Last Hope School, Secrets of the Stars, and The Last Book Wanderer. Now looking at my series, I didn't start any new series, technically. I am up to date with a series because The Last Hope School for Magical Delinquents is the first book in a middle grade fantasy series, but it's the only one that's available. So technically I'm up to date, even though I started it. I didn't progress with any series, but I did finish 4. So, these are The Empire of Gold, which is the final book in the David Bard trilogy, More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, which is the Murasaki Bookshop duology, The Secrets of Stars. There could be more in this series, but there haven't been for a while, and it doesn't look like Maria Kuznia is currently working on middle grade books, so that is just the 2 in the Ship of Shadows duology. And the 6th and final book in the Pages & Co series, The Last Book Wanderer. I'm now going to talk about the sizes of my book. So I read 1 book, which is an ant-sized book, so that is around 150 pages, which is Eric. I read 2 books, which were mouse-sized books, so that is 151 to 300 pages. And we have the More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop and The Secret Garden. I have 5 goat-sized books, so these are 301 to 400 pages. That's The Last Book Wanderer, Secrets of the Stars, The Last Hope School, The Other Mother, and Outrageous. I have 1 cow-sized book, which is 401 to 500 pages, which is The Ones We Burn. I then have 1 elephant-sized book, which is 501 to 700 pages, which is Jane Eyre. And I then have one blue whale sized book, which is 701 to 900 pages, and that is The Empire of Gold. Another one of my goals is that I would like to have half the books I read be by global majority authors. Failed spectacularly this month. I only have one global majority author, which is More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. The rest of the books I have are all by white authors. I then am looking at my genres. So I have two books that were classics, as I already mentioned. This was Jane Eyre and The Secret Garden, which I'm not able to hold correctly. Two non-fiction books, which is The Other Mother and Outrageous. So far quite surprising for me in terms of genres. One contemporary, which is More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. And then, less surprisingly, I have 6 books. That is not going to fit in one hand. This is going to be a disaster. Okay, there we go. I have 6 fantasy books. So that is Last Book Wanderer, Secrets of the Stars, The Last Hope School, Eric, The Empire of Gold, and The Ones We Burn. In terms of how diverse the books are that I'm reading, I have one book that is set in an Asian country. We have a book from Japan, which is More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. And I also have The Empire of Gold, which is set in the Middle East across quite a few different countries and has what's the word? Mythology. Mythology from the Middle East. So we have the jinn, and we have characters that are practicing Muslims within the book. In terms of LGBTQ plus representation, I have got 3 books. I have got The Ones We Burn, which has a sapphic and a male-male relationship in here. And we have Outrageous, which explores the Section 28, which stopped schools from teaching or talking about being gay, being lesbian, being bi. And we have The Other Mother, which is describing what it's like to be in a same-sex relationship when you are not the woman that gave birth to the children. In terms of disability representation, I have 0 books with physical disability. Secret Garden does not have that. And I have 0 books with neurodivergent representation and 0 books with mental health representation. There is a certain amount of grief and trauma in some of the stories that I have read this month, but it is it's kind of like a sort of brief mentions within the story. It isn't kind of a huge beat or moment for the character to start exploring their own mental health journey, and it's not so much of a theme within the book. There is a brief mention of how people's mental health had been affected by the law in Outrageous, but it was kind of just mentioned bits here and there. It didn't necessarily focus on it, so that's why I'm not counting them within this. It's not massive in terms of reading diversely. A quarter of what I've read did explore LGBTQ plus identity. There are some books where there were secondary characters in there, but I'm only counting it if the main characters are part of the LGBTQ plus community. So I think this month was definitely more about me finishing off series rather than hitting any other goals. But I did really enjoy all the books I read, which is the whole point of reading. You'll probably really pause the video there, but I was quite thirsty. I still like doing all these goals. It kind of keeps me accountable and kind of like just keeps me on track of like what I do want to be reading, and just makes me aware of when I'm looking for books, like what the balance is, what I'm trying to do to kind of like have my shelves reflect the things that I'm interested in, and to make sure I'm exploring a whole variety of different stories, because that's what I really enjoy. Okay, on to my least favourite book of the month. My favourite book of the month. If you have watched the wrap up, have a guess which ones you think are going to be least and my favourite. I'm always interested to know. So my least favourite book of the month makes me quite sad, but it is what it is. And that is Eric by Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett is one of my favourite authors. This was not his best work. This was one of his very early books, and this was a fun read, but I think because I know what Pratchett can do, it just didn't do the things I most love about what Pratchett can write about. So it was a bit of fun, but the story and plot didn't grip me. Rincewind, I like him the most when he's interacting with some of our core sets of characters, like the other wizards or Death. Not so much when he's off on his own adventure, just interacting with humanity, and it's kind of like place after place, kind of the plotting. It's not my favourite. So that's why Eric's my least favourite that I read this month. So I don't include rereads in favourites and least favourites because I have a different kind of connection with that book. So this is just for new reads. The favourite book that I read this month was The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. It just had to be. I love epic fantasy. I love political fantasy. I love layered worlds. I love magic systems. I love character arcs. I love relationships between characters and how they interact, and things that were explored, the themes that were explored in this book, the journeys the character went on, how it all kind of came together, the emotional connection that I got. It was just incredible. It was a wonderful, like, I loved the series. I really enjoyed the first book, and the second book just continued with all the things I loved from the first and kind of took them to a new level. And the third book did the same. Absolutely struck the landing. Really, really loved it. It could not be my favourite book that I read this month. And that's all my stats. Yay! I have been realising that when I spoke about kind of the beginning of the year and what I wanted to do, I wanted to include another stat. I wanted to include year of books published and kind of see, I put them into categories and then kind of see like if it what my reading reflects, like how am I just reading from a particular time period? Am I reading a lot more new reads and forgetting about backlogs? Like, what areas am I not reading from? Just because that interests me. But I've never got around to doing it. So I might try and do that for April. I am logging it so I can kind of see over the year what that looks like. But for a monthly month at the moment, I keep forgetting I'm doing it until I'm filming the video. So it's not really going to do any good. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed me talking about my stats. Do get chatty in the comments if you want to share any of your bookish stats. I'd love to hear about them. And happy reading, everyone. Bye bye.